Former Premier League
McElhenney.
Former Premier League referee Mike Dean has revealed that he refused to intervene in one of last season's glaring VAR controversies because he wanted to protect his, quotes, mate, the on-field official Anthony Taylor. Very keen to get your views on this in a second, Martin. Dean was on VAR duty. Do you remember it? Chelsea's 2-2 draw against Tottenham in August last year, and failed to highlight Christian Romero's hair pull on Cucurella's locks in the final minutes of the game. And then from a corner, Kane added in 96 minutes equaliser. A clash took place between the coaches at the time. Chelsea's Tuchel and Tottenham's Conte really went nose to nose. This was Tuchel at the time post-match.
There's only one team who deserves to win, it's us. But unfortunately, we have 2 goals that should be disallowed in times of VAR. It's incredible, and it's very hard to accept to concede 2 goals like this in ages of VAR. And since when can we pull hair on a football field? Is that a new rule, that we pull hair and get away with it, and then the next corner is played? It's a red card, that's it.
Have you spoken to the officials?
No, for what? For what? For what should I speak? It's honestly, will they take it back? Hopefully they come out and admit how bad performance this is, because it's super decisive.
So that was Tuchel at the time, and who was on VAR duty that day? It was Mike Dean. And Mike Dean has chosen to open up on that very subject on this podcast, which I hear is extremely successful, Upfront podcast, featuring a certain Simon Jordan. This was Dean speaking for the first time yesterday on this very topic.
I made a few mistakes as VAR. I missed the stupid hair pull at bloody Chelsea-Tottenham, which was pathetic from my point of view. And it's one of them where if I had my time again, what would I do? I'd send Ange to the screen. I think that, and the only reason he never sent to the screen, I've said this before, is that he's cautioned both managers. He's had a hell of a game. It's been such a tough game end to end. And I said to Andy afterwards, I just didn't want to send you to the screen after what's gone on in the game. And Andy said it doesn't matter what goes on in the game. I didn't want to send him up because he's a mate as well as a referee, and I think I didn't want to send him up because he didn't want any more because what he already had. And Andy's big and bold enough and ugly enough to know full well that if he's going to the screen, he's going to the screen for a reason. And I think that it's a really bad, really bad call by me, and it kind of affected me as VR going forward. Probably missed a few games because I think I said before about, if you're a referee, you gets out of the limelight. That was a major error. And I think from my point of view, I was so disappointed because if they don't score from it, it's not a big an issue. But I knew full well then I'd be stood down the week after. I asked to take a bit of time off because it just wasn't for me. I used to get in the car on a Friday night and drive to dreading Saturday because you used to sit in the chair on a Saturday and think, hope nothing. I used to be petrified sitting in the chair thinking, come on, the guy goes down the box, so give the pen. Oh, he's give the pen. Are you happy days? He's give the pen.
Right, so it took you out of the responsibility.
Yeah.
I mean, Martin, I know you're listening to that extremely closely, but just to recap there, Dean saying on Simon's podcast up front that he didn't want to send Taylor to the screen because of the grief that he'd already had in the game. Now, Dean was taken off VAR as a result of that, and now you hear that, you're not surprised.
Yeah, and you know, the thing about it is he's trying to protect a friend, he's trying to protect a mate, and when you're in a position of authority like this is about, I'm just looking at the integrity and the honesty of this. I mean, the ramifications were huge on that day for both managers. Tuchel lost the plot completely, the injustice of what was happening around him. And it was happening because the chap in VAR was trying to protect his mate, who was the referee. So, I mean, I just can't believe and fathom that through. He's speaking very quick, Jim, in that, and I know that you're interpreting what he's saying. But if he's just trying to protect a mate, it's just completely wrong. And we know why he's been pulled out. Obviously, he's been making lots of mistakes. But a man like that shouldn't really be in the VAR chair. And you wonder, I then start to look at this particular guy. I don't want to, other fans will look at it and, a conspiracy theory, or the Arsenal fans for many years felt, oh, hold on a minute, what's going on? What's coming into his mind? What should come into his mind is what's rightful, the right decisions in that moment. And you shouldn't be in a job of that importance. If it is that something comes into your mind that's on other than the truth and justice on the day, I think it's remarkable what he's saying there. I know he's been honest, but I don't want to hear it. I honestly don't want to hear that he's tried to protect his mate above all else. And what he's there for is to make sure that the rules are upheld and the game is played in a fair manner. And that simply did not happen. I watched it that day, Cucurella, start of last season. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. But I thought he missed it, but he didn't miss it. He just wanted to protect his mate. That's just unbelievable.
I mean, in that exchange there, Simon, you were quiet for the first time in your life. But you were quite rightly letting Mike Dean speak, as you would.
Yeah.
Could you believe what he was saying to you?
Well, look, contextually, you have to take it into the framework of the entire hour that he spoke, because what he was doing was being very fluid and very candid, and also talking about the clear delineation between his capability as a referee on the field and his capability as a VAR official. And he was very clear in the fact that he didn't feel that he was able to be a VAR. He wasn't taken out by the PGMOL. He decided that this wasn't for him, and in conjunction with them, they both came to that conclusion. Now, when you look at
it's kind of 50-50, isn't it?
Well,
Simon?
I think there was an element that you could make the argument, and he wasn't defending the accusation about me suggesting that he was pushed before he, jumped before he pushed.
I mean, he's very honest. He's really honest.
But what he spoke about very candidly was his inability to be a VAR official. It wasn't for him. He couldn't do it. He couldn't find the ability to be able to use a technology the way he wanted to. He struggled with the concept of a very different role than being on the field. Now, if we want to conflate that into his on-field performances, then that's our gift. He's opened that particular door. But contextually, when I was listening to him, I thought there's somebody making subjective decisions like we all do in life, and we all make subjective decisions. Now, the language that he used, I don't think is what he was trying to impart, that he was suggesting that he was sparing his friend, but it sounds precisely like what it sounds. That's what he was doing. But if you listen to the entire interview, rather than that excerpt, you'll have a very different view of Mike Dean. But he's opened the door, and one of the criticisms that the PGMO didn't want people to come on and do an interview, and I was very irritated and had a very strong conversation with Howard Webb about the fact that we're staunch defenders of the refereeing fraternity, and that actually giving them a voice is a very useful tool. And so Mike has come on, ultimately, after he's left the PGMOL, is now doing it in Sky, and you have to listen to this interview in all of its entirety to get an opinion on it. But that was a part that will no doubt lend itself to the conclusion that Martin's just drawn.
But he's misinterpreting, isn't he, the role of a referee. So he's not the referee on the pitch, but he's the referee in the VAR room. So ultimately, he has to come to the right decision. So if you're going to start talking about protecting people, then you do open yourself up to your integrity over the years.
I think he's also, if you listen to it, when he talks about the terror being, I think he's telling you that he wasn't capable of being a VAR operative.
Well, then he wasn't capable of being a referee then, was he?
Very different skill sets. And what he was saying is sitting in that chair, watching the VAR, dreading a decision having to be made, a penalty's been given, he's dreading having to be involved in it. That is someone patently telling you that the VAR role that he was assigned...
It wasn't for him.
Was not for him.
It wasn't for him, and that's exactly what I take out of it, Simon. But that, I mean, when you contextualise it, yes. But the section we heard from Dean... not unsurprisingly from your podcast, Simon, was picked up everywhere last night. Mike Dean was trending last night. I remember Dean used to sit in our place in Qatar at breakfast, and he would engage with you and have great discussions about football in general. But here, he knows with Simon in this podcast, he is on the record.
He is.
And he's on the record as saying, I didn't want to send him to the screen because he's a mate. As well as a referee.
All he should be concerned with, Jim,
because
is
I didn't want him to get any more grief.
Making the right decision. That's his role and responsibility. Look, this
conspiracy
starts
theories
to
start
but I start to think that this is deceitful, and then I think, well, is it even fraudulent? These are massive ramifications here. You're in a position.
I think
fraudulent.
I think you're disappearing into hyperbole here.
Not really.
I know, and I've seen a lot of the reaction, and
it's-
I've seen that the media have picked up and run with this particular story, and now that the refereeing fraternity will probably reject.
No, but Simon, let me ask you this. What do we really know? How many other officials working in the VAR truck have decided, he's my mate?
No, Jim.
Don't go to the screen.
No, I don't think
go to the screen.
I don't think that's happening on carte blanche. I think the referee by
How do you know that?
No, I'm not prepared to go that far. This is someone that is declaring that he's tried to protect a friend, and that's very wrong. And maybe he's coming out with that now. He wants to do it. But Jim,
this is someone saying that they couldn't do the job as a VAR. They're saying we're two different skills. He's saying I was not capable of doing this job. I wasn't capable of doing it, and as a result of it, I made decisions that were
So do you think it's a one-off, or do you think there's other officials in the VA truck who, similar to Dean, aren't capable of doing that job?
Well, it depends if they think they're capable. I mean, he clearly is saying in this interview, I couldn't do VAR. I embraced VAR. I think it's a wonderful addition to the game. I think it's a necessary evil to serve a far greater good. But for me, I couldn't do it. I couldn't operate the way I operated on the pitch. Well, what do we want from people? Do we want people to be honest and admit their mistakes and put themselves in the way of the court of public opinion and say, this was an error?
Chelsea fans wanted to go home from Stamford Bridge with a win that day.
And Chelsea fans will want their manager to pick the right player at times, and sometimes he won't. And sometimes they'll make decisions based upon their own subjectivity. I'm not condoning it. I'm simply saying that it's a broader perspective than the isolated part that we've played. And I do think there's something commendable about the fact he's got the balls to come and say it.
I don't think anything commendable about this. I think it's totally unacceptable. Totally unacceptable, his behaviour in all this, Jim. And really, we don't want that type of person connected to the game. You have to go there totally unbiased and make your call in that VAR room. And I'm pretty certain no one else in that room now. Howard Webb is like cleaning that place out, making sure the right people are there. And we have to believe that the referees are doing this in an honest manner every week. Otherwise, there's no point in playing.
Yeah, I mean, but I do think in everything in life, I do think it's a bit rich for players to get...
Oh, to be righteous and virtuous. Yeah. Well, they are in a position to be
authority. To fair to Martin, he's looking at it totally objectively.
Yes, I understand that. He's looking at it in isolation for the paragraph that Mike Dean has explained, that he's made a subjective view, which is the wrong view. He doesn't have to tell you this, and that his capability as a VAR official is compromised. I do think it's a bit rich coming from a player that spent their entire life trying to con referees and put themselves in a position where referees are being disadvantaged.
I like to think that I was honest.
Okay, not you, but the fraternity that you speak on behalf of.
No, but doesn't matter. That we play the game of football. Yeah, at the end of the day, we shake hands with the referee and we assume that he's playing, he's got everybody's interests at heart. And we don't think there's any bias anywhere. And I'm sorry, but on this occasion, he was prepared to look after his mate as the referee, when actually the greater game is at stake here. We want honesty and integrity from our officials. And now all we're doing is pushing it to a VAR room, completely removed, and somebody makes a decision in this manner.
Yeah.
It's completely out of order. Chelsea scored ultimately from that corner that took place after that. It shouldn't have been allowed.
And what Martin has done, and you and I haven't, is played at the highest level in the Premier League and know what it's like to experience the value of a win.
Jim, and with due respect to Martin, I've sat there owning a football club being affected by referees' decisions.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.